Hey guys, it's Izzy here to do my August reading wrap up. So we are going to start with the first book that I read this month. So this month I did get to mood read a book, since last month I went above and beyond with my reading. I read extra books. So the book is a new release and it is Shoulder Season by Christina Clancy. Now this book is like exactly what I would write if I wrote a book. Almost like I had no idea about all this stuff at Lake Geneva. And if you want more synopsis on these, check out the TBR video. So I really like this, and I'm pretty sure it was a 5. Oh yeah, I write them in here now. Yeah, it was a 5 star. So books that you like are so much harder to talk about than books that you don't like, because you're like, there's all good things. So and then there's a bad book, you can talk about all the things that you didn't like. But yeah, so as I said, it's what I would write if I wrote a book. It was perfect in that way, and I like how we kind of had... Here's one thing. We get a lot of her life before working at the Playboy Resort. We get a lot of her working at the Playboy Resort. Obviously, that's the main plot of the book, but not a lot after. We get a little bit, but I wish there would have been more to show what her life was like after that. I wish there was a sequel to this. I don't know. I just wish there was more. But still, it was a 5 star, and I can't complain. The Selective Stories of Philip K. Dick is our next book. This was a gift from a subscriber, so thank you, Ben, for getting me this book. So we get to see these short stories in chronological order, and that was really nice, because we get to see, because they were written over a decade or two, so we get to see the author, Philip K. Dick, get more comfortable with his writing. He is more comfortable into writing really whatever, and getting to write what he wants. I think we see that more and more as we get through more stories. A thing that is really fascinating about reading classic sci-fi, I mean, this only came out in the 1950s and 1960s, but a lot of it is supposed to take place in what is today our modern day, or basically from the 1970s to today. And to think of things that Philip K. Dick got correct of how our world is, especially with our technology and whatnot, and then things that were not correct, because obviously at that time he wrote these in the middle of the Cold War, so there's that thoughts of there's going to be a huge nuclear war and the world's in a nuclear disaster. It's Soviets versus Americans and all of that. I still think there is some tension with Russia, in my opinion, but I don't think we're at the point of wanting to blow each other off the face of the earth. And we are obviously not living in a nuclear wasteland, and we don't have people living on Mars or the moon that we know of. There may be, who knows. So I love reading classic sci-fi, because we just get to see what people in the past thought our present day would be like, and then just doing comparisons between if it came true or if it didn't. Obviously these are not predictions, because this is science fiction, but it's still interesting. The next book is a classic again, but this is a classic going back to the 1800s, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I did not expect this to be my new favorite book or anything going in, but I do want to read classics. I don't know if you can kind of see this shelf. I have some of my classics right there. This one I could just not get into the story. I was getting the characters confused. I felt like they weren't defined enough and developed enough. I just couldn't get into the story. The writing was nice. It was beautiful. And I felt the same way when I read Jane Eyre, which is written by Charlotte Bronte, which is a sister of Emily Bronte. So with that book, it is basically the exact same way I felt about Wuthering Heights. I like kind of the way that the location is a character in itself. And yeah, I gave this book 2 out of 5. I know people are gonna come for me, because people either love this book or they hate this book from what I've seen. And I was in the latter of it. Next on Goodreads, this was listed as a contemporary, but this took place before I was born, so I don't really consider it a contemporary because it wasn't a contemporary for me. But it's Let Me Hear a Rhyme by Tiffany D. Jackson. Now, I did really like this book. This plot is so interesting. So it's musical driven. I think the music is really one of the main things. And for me, if a book can be about any kind of music, I will love it. Just the love of music is just so inspiring and so relatable for me. I'm not a huge rap listener, but still seeing the passion and dedication to this music is something that I can very much appreciate. So I think if you listen to rap, you could read Daisy Jones and the Six and get the same kind of feelings for rock music. So I don't think you have to be exclusive to listening to rap to enjoy this book, but I think probably if you do listen to rap, you'll love this book so much more. But we have that musical plot, but then we have an underlying plot of a mystery of who killed Jasmine's brother Steph. So there was a murder, and obviously with it being in Brooklyn and being a black man, the police don't really care that much. They're like, it's probably drug related, whatever. We don't care. This stuff happens all the time, so it doesn't really get investigated. It gets pushed aside by NYPD. So obviously, so these three friends come together to put Steph's music out there after his death to raise money to help get a private investigator to investigate Steph's death. And I think that's so inspirational that these friends came together over their friend and brother's death, and then just that having that love of music as well, how that brought them together, and just how this one guy, even though he's dead, he brought all these people together. And I just think that's a very moving and beautiful story, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So the last one is A World Lit Only by Fire by William Manchester. This is a nonfiction about the Renaissance. We start with the fall of Rome, and then we go into the Renaissance itself, and then ending with Magellan's adventure around the world, because that's really, in my mind, when the Renaissance ends is when the Americas are discovered. So I did learn a lot from this book, but I also knew a lot going in, so I think that was very helpful, because this is just a brief, this book isn't even 300 pages, it's just very brief, going over it, going over topics, people, and all of that. It's a shock the Medici weren't mentioned more, because for me they're like the forefront of the Renaissance. That's who I put in front, since they funded so many artists and musicians and sculptors and everything in that time period. Religion and all of that. And religion was another thing that played a huge part in the Renaissance. I don't think a lot of us think about. Yes, these paintings and all are usually inspired by like the Virgin Mary, Jesus, whatever other biblical stories. The religion, just the rebelling from religion in a sense, or rebelling from the Catholic Church mainly. It's all very fascinating, and I did learn a lot, but I also have a lot of questions. But I do think that is a fun thing about nonfiction. You leave with a lot of more questions, so that it makes you go look out for more books and whatnot for you to read to get a more in-depth view of these topics. So I think these little short ones are fun, because then you get topics like, for me, I want to know more about the Borgias right now, because I did start the TV show, but I didn't. I'm terrible at watching TV. That it doesn't say anything for the TV show that I didn't get through it. But I do, so I want to research more on the Borgias, read more about them. I'm sorry, there was a car out there and I got startled. But there is so much more that I want to know. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And if you're on Instagram or Facebook, give this a like my page, and be sure to share the video. Bye! Good in that thumbnail.